on? Good afternoon, everyone. I don't think this is on. Good afternoon, everyone. That one's good. Okay. So if everybody could go ahead and get a seat, we will get started here. It's so wonderful to have you all here. We have a nice full room. This is so nice. So my name is Julie Evans, and I'm Chief Executive Officer of Project Tomorrow, and I want to welcome you, both the folks that are here in the room here on Capitol Hill, as well as our virtual audience that is participating in today's briefing through our live streaming that we're doing through our website today. So I want to welcome everybody to this year's briefing. This particular briefing is looking at the Speak Up data that we collected from educators, parents, and actually also community members, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we get into it today. So I want to start off just very quickly with first one question for everyone. So for the folks that are here today, at least here physically in the room, for whom is this your first Speak Up briefing? Oh, so quite a few folks. Okay. But I also see some, dare I say, some old timers here, some folks that have been with us before. So those folks that have been to previous Speak Up briefings. Ah, yes, some good friends that are here as well. Well, thank you so very, very much, all of you, for being here with us. I do want to thank Congressman George Miller, who helped us secure this beautiful room. Not only a gorgeous room here, the gold room, but I don't know if any of you that got here a little bit early, I know that Dr. Murphy and his team had an opportunity to go outside and enjoy some of the sunshine and the beautiful view here on Capitol Hill. So thank you very much to Congressman Miller for his help with that. I also want to thank all of our fabulous sponsors that make Speak Up possible for us every single year. The opportunity to do this very special research and then share the responses here as well. And of course, our good friends are here from Blackboard, and so I do want to especially thank them not only for their support of Speak Up, but also for their participation here today. And then we have some fabulous nonprofit partners, kind of our kindred spirits, that help us in terms of outreach around Speak Up, in terms of promoting the survey out to schools and districts. And I saw a couple of my buddies here. Kari is here from the Flip Learning Network. I saw Jennifer come in from CETA. I also think we are supposed to have some other folks here as well from some of our other partners, but whomever is here, we welcome old friends and new friends. It's nice to have you all here as well. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Joseph South from the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Education Technology. Come on up, Joseph.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's great to be with people who believe in the work that we're doing. The report that we have today really underscores the need to make the transition to digital learning, and that now is the right time for doing that. If you think about it, technology has really transformed every aspect of our lives. You don't shop the same way you used to shop. Your entertainment's nowhere near what it used to be like. Ever since online movies have come, I spend very little time in a movie theater. The experience of recreation is completely transformed, and our professional work's also changed. But the one area where things look very much the same is, unfortunately, many of our schools. And it's time for that to change. We talk a lot about bringing technology into schools, but our students never talk about bringing technology to the mall. It's not a thing to be brought. It's something that they're using seamlessly and integrated into every aspect of their life. This is how it needs to be in school as well. I have a 9-year-old who had an assignment to create. He was supposed to create a report on weather instruments, and he came home and immediately went to the computer and opened up an animated slide creation program and started putting his deck together to create this. He didn't do it because he was trying to bring technology to the classroom. He did it because it was the right tool for the job. Unfortunately, when he brought it to school, we had a little issue trying to work with the school so that he could actually display his work. And after a few emails and some emergency flash drive handoffs, we made it. So the school did accommodate us, and I appreciated that, but it was a stretch. It should not be a stretch for a school to accommodate the digital creators among our students. I just think about my own workplace. I never go around saying, oh, I work in a blended workplace. We're really cutting edge. We do some of our work face to face and some online. It's pretty exciting stuff. This needs to be built in. It needs to be part of the DNA of our schools. So I want to talk about some of the things that we're doing on a federal level to try and move this forward. You're probably aware of the President's Connect Ed initiative. A lot of people are aware of the first pillar, which is to bring broadband to 99% of the classrooms. And we've been saying it the next 5 years, but unfortunately he said it a year ago, so we've only got 4 years left in his 5 years. He also has there's four total pillars, though. There's 3 other parts we don't talk about as much. The second one is to get interactive devices in the hands of every student, to provide professional development for teachers so they can use that effectively, and to create an ecosystem where high-quality digital content is available on those devices. So collectively, we can really make a change. A lot of progress has been made. The FCC has stepped up and is bringing $2 billion to the table through their E-rate program. They're also modernizing the entire program, which should release even more funds for broadband connectivity. Private industry has stepped up and answered the call of the President. And there's so many companies now, I don't name them anymore because I worry about leaving one of them out, but they've brought together over $2 billion in pledges, from connectivity to devices to professional development for teachers to digital software to help our students become digital creators. So we're making a lot of progress on the first 2 of the President's part of the agenda, the connectivity and the devices. There's a lot of work to do, but we're getting there. The part that I'm focused on and very concerned about is the people side of this. We need our teachers and our leaders to have the right sort of support so that they can be effective. Roughly half of our teachers say that they lack the necessary professional development to use technology effectively in the classroom. That is unacceptable. We cannot move forward with the transition that we need to make collectively if our teachers don't feel prepared to do it. It's interesting, if you look at the report that we'll be discussing today, if you look at what the most technology advanced teachers are doing, they are conducting internet research to inform their lesson. They're learning something important to their work by watching videos online. They're exchanging text messages with colleagues, so they're using digital technology to reach out and bring in their colleagues to expand their community of practice. And they're digitizing content that meets their instructional needs. This is exactly what teachers should be doing. Unfortunately, the percent of teachers who self-identify as technologically advanced, 28%. So they're doing the right things, but there's nowhere near enough of them. So how can we help? One of the things that our office has done, we've written what's called the Dear Colleague letter to make sure it's clear to every district and every state in the country that you can use Title I, Title II, Title III, IDEA funds to buy technology to support the goals of those various programs. I just heard a story last week from a leader in a school district where she took the letter, slapped it down on the table and said, we can do this. And she took Title II funds, bought out her teachers who are part of this 28%, turned them into coaches for a percentage of their time to help other teachers sitting at the shoulder, at the elbow, helping them make this transition. Those are the kinds of programs that are really going to move the needle. But helping teachers individually will not be enough. We have to work on the district level if we're going to scale. What we find is that there's a lot of teachers out there who get it and who are making this transition, and they become these islands of innovation in their school or in their district. And it's very hard for them to spread that. Sometimes the reward for being innovative is you get to fix everybody else's computer or phone when it doesn't work. You don't really get the chance to be a teacher leader, and we want to change that. So this coming year, our office is focusing on creating future-ready schools, and we're going to be engaging, if possible, all 14,000 superintendents in a discussion around how to make their schools future-ready. And this includes 2 key elements. One is a plan for how to bring technology into the district at scale and in a sustainable way. Some of the funding that is being used for this transition we're a little concerned about involves bonding that gets paid off over 20 years when the technology it's buying needs to be replaced in 5 years. So we need to find sustainable ways to do that. We also want them to have a plan for the people part of the equation to make sure that there is professional development in place, that they have a clear goal and a clear path to what they're trying to accomplish. This is a unique time for us, and it's an important inflection point. If you look at the transition to college and career ready standards, a lot of schools and districts are making an investment right now in new materials, new curriculum, and the infrastructure to support that new way of learning. If they take advantage of this time to also transition their school to digital learning, they can create some savings through perhaps not buying textbooks, perhaps reducing the amount of printing and paper usage in their schools, and they can use that to fund their digital future in a sustainable way. And that's why this is such an important time. We know that you're working hard to make that happen. We're working hard to make that happen, and I believe that if we work together, we can accomplish it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joseph. You know, I so very much agree with what you were talking about us being at this inflection point right now. It's really sort of like a window of opportunity that we have to be able to take advantage of the investments that schools and districts are making to get their schools ready for these new standards. And so a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is this idea of linking together that readiness aspect with digital tools and resources. They shouldn't be functioning as silos, but rather really need to be interwoven together in one strategic plan. So that was a wonderful setup, Joseph. Thank you so very much. Okay, so we are going to be talking about this year's Speak Up report. You do all have it in your packets, and if you didn't get a packet when you came in, of course you can grab one on the way out, and of course it's available online as well. So we very strategically, shall we say, named this particular report the New Digital Learning Playbook, with the idea that we are advancing forward in terms of thinking about digital learning and coming up with new strategies, and then advancing college and career-ready skills for within our K-12 schools. So really thinking about that intersection between the two. Now what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to share a little bit about what Speak Up is so that you have the context, and then we'll talk about some of the highlights of the report. But let me caution you right now, I'm not going to go through all the data that's in the report. I'm sure you're very happy to hear that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I've chosen just a few data points that I thought would be most interesting as stimulators to our panel to have that sort of conversation. So that's the way we're going to set this up. Now, for those of you that are new here to us, you may not be as familiar with Speak Up as some of the veterans that have been with us before or who have used some of our data. So what I'm going to do now is tell you a little bit about Speak Up just as a general initiative. First thing probably for you to know is that Project Tomorrow is a national education nonprofit group. We have a very strong emphasis on improving the learning experience for students, both in school and out of school. We very firmly believe that science, math, and technology resources are great levers for developing the type of college and career-ready skills that our students need. One of our initiatives is our Speak Up National Research Project. It's the reason you're here today. It is an unusual research project because we create these online surveys and then make them available to any K-12 school or district that wants to use them to collect your own feedback from your stakeholders. What makes it unusual is that we don't go out and say, well, this school can participate and this school cannot. We actually make it available to every single school, whether that's a private school, a parochial school, a public school, a magnet school, a virtual school, a charter school, any flavor of school that we're going to come up with next year or the year after. We make all these surveys available. And what's also interesting is that we have surveys for K-12 students, teachers, librarians, school site administrators, district administrators, technology leaders, parents, and this past year we also had a special survey available for community members. Now, in addition to making the surveys available to any school or district that would like to use them, we also give back to all the participating schools their locally collected data and the national data to use for benchmarking. That is truly our nonprofit mission. I know that I like to say very much that we come here to Washington, D.C. to share some of our data to hopefully inform some policies and some programs that are coming here. But really at the heart of our work is being able to help school and district leaders make change at the very local level. And so making that data available to school and district leaders is really at the heart of the Speak Up National Research Project. So since we started this in 2003, we've had a little bit over 3.4 million surveys. The particular data that we're looking at in this event is from last fall. The surveys were open for schools and districts to use from the beginning of October to the middle of December. We had a little bit over 400,000 online surveys that were submitted from all 50 states. And you can see the participation here from the different audiences. We did have participation, as I said, from all 50 states. We think that's very significant to be able to have those voices of the students, the teachers, the parents, and the administrators from all across the country. In addition to that, we do extraordinary outreach to make sure that we're not just hearing from certain types of schools. So we have a nice breakdown of urban schools, suburban schools, and rural schools that participate, as well as Title I schools and majority minority schools as well. We did release our first report here on the Hill on April 9th. That particular report was focused in on the student data that we had collected, and you can retrieve that online as well, though we've also given you a copy in your packet today. Okay, so let me start off right here, giving you a little bit more context. Quite often folks will say to me, well, why do schools and districts sign up to participate in Speak Up? And very interestingly, we just had the same conversation actually with Arlington Public Schools and their team about participation as well. And so the schools come to us, districts come to us with all sorts of different agendas in terms of why they want to collect this sort of data from their stakeholders. Whether or not they're interested in starting a new mobile learning project and they want to hear about parents and what parents think about it. Maybe they're interested in expanding the online classes or bringing blended learning or flipped learning into their school or district, and they want to hear what the teachers think of those type of things. Or maybe overall they're interested in what students are thinking about and they want to be able to make sure that they're better addressing the needs of their students. One of the other things that we're seeing increasingly as a reason that schools and districts participate is that they have a very particular critical need right now to make sure that today's students are well prepared for the future. So what we're really talking about is making sure that these kids have the right skills that they need to be able to be successful, whether they go to college, whether they go into the military, whether they go directly to a job or career through some type of vocational training. But unfortunately, the hard reality kind of looks like this, and I don't necessarily want to start the briefing with kind of a downer in terms of the numbers, but I think it was good for the context. So for example, if we were to look at about 100 7th grade students anywhere in the United States, 93 of those 7th grade students would raise their hand and say that they want to go to college, which is great. That's fabulous in terms of their motivation. Of those, 70 will graduate from high school, is what the national numbers look like. I understand different communities have different numbers. Of those 70, 44 will enroll in college that following fall. And of those 44 that enroll in college after graduation, only 26 will actually graduate from college. Now, there's a whole number of different reasons why these statistics exist today on a national composite level, and we could debate all afternoon about all of those. But one of the ones that really resonated with me when I was going through some of the research on this is the idea that in many ways today's students are not prepared for either the rigors of college or the expectations for many jobs and careers that require some sort of post-secondary education. And so that really struck with me that we're possibly doing a disservice, shall we say, to our students if we are not helping them really be able to realize their dreams with being well prepared to go in whatever path they might possibly be interested in going into. So that's why for this particular report this year, we put a very strong focus on looking at the success factors for students, this idea of college and career ready skills, and what is the intersection in terms of the investments that are also being made in digital tools and resources to be able to support that in a very strategic and cohesive manner going forward. So what I'd like to do is invite my esteemed panel to come up now and join me up here, and then I'll introduce them to you and we'll get started into the conversation. So let me introduce you to my fabulous panel that's here. I'm actually very excited about learning from them. I'm hoping that you are too. And I think I'll start on this side and go this way. And then, Breck, I'm going to tee you up because when I do questions, I'm going to go that way. Okay? So right here on my right, your left, is Dr. Patrick Murphy, who's the superintendent of Arlington Public Schools. Welcome, Dr. Murphy. We're thrilled to have you here with us. From just across the river in Virginia. I'm also very thrilled that Dr. Murphy had the opportunity to come and join us today because he's actually has a whole new lofty title, which he's the 2015 Virginia Superintendent of the Year. So congratulations on that, Dr. Murphy. And then right here next to me, within arm's reach, is Mika Colbreth. And Mika is a middle school English and language arts teacher. from Prince George's County in Maryland. And so it's wonderful to have you here, Mika. I can't wait to learn from you today. Now, right here next to me on my left, your right, is Monet Deadweiler. And Monet is a junior at the Cesar Chavez Academy here in Washington, D.C. And it's wonderful having you here. Well, you're a junior just finishing? Rising senior. Congratulations. So I'm very much looking forward to the student point of view on this conversation of college and career readiness. So welcome, Monet. And then next to Monet is my good friend, Dr. Kathy Burr from the Tiger Woods Learning Center. In addition to all of Kathy's work leading the Tiger Woods Learning Center and being part of the Tiger Woods Learning Foundation, both here on the East Coast as well as in California, Kathy is also a member of the Project Tomorrow Board of Directors. And so an extra special opportunity to have some time with Kathy today. So welcome, Kathy. And then next to Kathy, all the way over on my left, your right, is Breck DeWitt, who is the CTO and National Director for K-12 and Higher Ed with the EMC Corporation. And Breck and I have actually had the opportunity to work on some other commissions and some other activities around this idea of the connection between digital learning and preparing our students for the workforce. And so it's great to have you here as well, Breck. So as you can see, I have quite a panel, many different points of view, many different roles and responsibilities within the community, within schools, within education. So I think it's going to be a fabulous conversation. So as I said, my plan here today is I'm going to share a little bit of data to kind of sort of spike up the well a little bit, shall we say, in terms of our conversation. And then I'm going to have a couple questions for the audience. So really what we're going to be talking about is three big questions. What do we really mean by college and career readiness skills? We'll have a conversation about that. Then we're going to talk about this relationship. Is there a linkage between digital tools and preparing students for the future? And then sort of teed up by Joseph in his opening remarks, we're going to talk about the capacity of schools and districts to be able to take advantage of some of these tools and this wonderful window of opportunity that we have. And I look at it as a very positive window of opportunity as well. So let's start off with defining the skills that students need for success. And this was a particular question that we asked on this year's survey. And we asked students about this question as well as the adults. So we asked school and district administrators, teachers, parents, and community members. And it was really based on the research that we had done about this topic of college and career ready skills. What do we really mean by that phrase? And so we asked the different respondents to tell us in a relative importance what they thought was most important in the different skills that are being discussed. So as you can see here, critical thinking and problem solving skills came up very high on everyone's list. Teachers actually looked at it as second to providing students with the ability to learn independently, to be self-directed learners, which I think is interesting, but it still came up very high. Some of the other ones that came up as high ranking was the ability to work with people that have different backgrounds, which is very interesting from a cultural awareness standpoint, the idea of teamwork and collaboration skills, that ability to work independently, and then also this idea of technology skills came up in the high rankings as well, both from the standpoint of information and media literacy, digital citizenship, and then also being able to use technology as truly a workplace skill, not just something that, as Joseph said, you sort of do on the side. Now, it was interesting when we polled the students about which of these skills they were explicitly learning within their classes right now, only 51% of the middle school and high school students told us that they felt they were explicitly learning technology skills that would be workplace applicable, which we thought was also very interesting. But let's take it one step further here with the adults in the conversation and look at what they told us in terms of the relative importance of using technology effectively on student success. So if we look here, we have district administrators, high school principals, high school teachers, and parents of high school students. We specifically pulled the data looking just at high school as a cohort, so it would be kind of more apples to apples instead of mixing it up a little bit. So across the board, we see here the green bars are extremely important, the red bars are important. We see everyone says it's important. The thing that always strikes me with this particular data, and this data represents a question that we ask every year on the Speak Up survey, is that the district administrators, the high school principals, and the parents of high school students are actually more likely to represent the effective use of technology as extremely important than high school teachers do. They still rank it as important, the teachers do, but there is a little bit of a disconnect there. And I think it's interesting because as we go through our time together here today, we'll talk about some different types of disconnects like this. The opportunity we have is not so much to focus in on the disconnects, but focus in on how we can bridge some of those disconnects, whether it is through things such as the Connected Educator, professional development opportunities, or bringing particular types of devices into the classroom, or helping districts build up their capacity. So with that, I'm going to start right off with some questions here for my fabulous panel. And as I said, Breck, I'm going to start with you. I told you I would. What I'd like to hear from the panel, and you don't all have to respond. If you think you have something to add, please feel free to chime in. How do you define this term of college and career-ready skills? You know, we saw what the administrators, the teachers, the parents told us, and the community members.
You know, I almost have a problem, and I know we all use that term soft skills, but it almost sort of downplays the importance of those skills to some extent. But I'm definitely hearing that not only from you, that they're very important, but also from other folks as well. Some other perspectives on defining college and career-ready skills from the panel? Go ahead.
Sure. The Tiger Woods Foundation, actually, our goal is to help kids get to college. That's why we exist. And one of the ways we do that is through the Tiger Woods Learning Center. And what we've tried to do over the last 10 years, I think since we've been under inception for the Learning Center, is connect young people to how they apply what they're learning in school to the real world through a series of hands-on, integrated technology, learning opportunities for them. And I think sometimes what misses in kind of traditional schooling is that connectivity about why am I learning this and how am I going to use it in my future. And I'm not sure we always make those really great connections for kids. But I would say in addition to career and college readiness, I think the other thing that's really important is that in the workforce, I'm looking for people who will seek new solutions and that can actually use technology and leverage technology in order to inform the work, inform who they're interacting with or the life. So I would add that as well.
That relevancy and context piece is something that we hear overwhelmingly from the students that will say, where is the relevant application of what I'm learning? And so the center, because I've had the opportunity to visit several, of course, does a wonderful job of doing that. Other thoughts? Go ahead.
I wanted to add that with the push for Common Core, the focus is that whatever is being taught and whatever is being learned, preparing students to be college and career ready, meaning that everything that the panel said a moment ago, meaning that they have critical thinking skills, they're able to problem solve, they're able to take what they learn and apply it across a skill set, apply it across all the different content areas, to see how they connect to each other, that they have literacy skills, that they're able to write proficiently, and that these skills translate into what you learn in college and being successful in college, and once you get outside of college, you have the skill set necessary to be successful. You have the skill set necessary to be current in the sense that you keep up with the world as it's changing, as you know, it's technologically nowadays, and are you able to compete not just with your peers in your school or even in your state, but globally? And that's also where technology comes to play as well.
You know, it's so interesting you bring that up, Mika. In doing the research for this report, we obviously went and read an awful lot of reports that were out on college and career readiness. And it really struck me, and I can't give you the citation right now, but it's actually in the report, I believe, that 38% of freshmen in college, only 38%, felt that they were well prepared for college-level work across the country. So that obviously shows there's a big gap there in terms of how well we're preparing students, not just even to get to college or to be eligible for college, to actually be successful when they're there. Wonderful. Any other thoughts on this topic?
Well, I know that in high school, because I am in high school, but that a lot of times we're basically just taught information and we're not really taught how to go about finding this information, which is mostly what working and being in college is about. It's not a lot about what did you learn, how you learn it and things like that, or learning how to research and things like that. And I know that at my school, when a lot of students come back and speak with us, they tell us that schools didn't prepare them for the amount of work or the amount of research. They basically just taught this information, but not about how to go about learning on their own, like independently learning and studying.
That's a fabulous point, Renee, and I think it kind of harkens back to some of the stuff that Brett started off talking about, which is that idea of having people in the workforce that know how to kind of work through things and can be self-directed and self-starters. So a wonderful point in terms of that. And I'm going to get back and I'm going to ask you some examples of that in our next section as well. Dr. Murphy, any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts, and also sort of reminiscing. I can distinctly remember sitting in the auditorium at James Madison University and the president saying, look to your left, look to your right. Only half of you will be here in 4 years. And if we were working for a company and they said that, only half of our cars will be on the road in 4 years. I'm not sure we'd be buying too many of those cars. So I think the scaffolding or bringing to scale, this is a very common discussion. By the way, thank you very much to Project Tomorrow for doing this. This is very helpful, I know, for many of us in the public education field and leaders, because this really continues the dialogue. So I'm listening to the radio yesterday. I'm coming home from being out, and you guys like the Nationals? Really enjoyed it. And so Gio Gonzalez is out. He's injured. And so they talk about him coming back, and they say, well, we're going to run a simulation game with him. That didn't even really dawn on me that you would run a simulation game to prepare him coming off an injury. So I think that's the types of things that I'm hearing that we need to begin to be able to do. I've got some specifics, I'll probably wait here a little bit, but how do we bring these things to scale? There are great examples out there of individual excellence. How do we get the business community, state, federal government, and that relationship tied together so some of these things can grow and expand? And I think these students here from Cesar Chavez Charter School are a wonderful example. The school recognizes. Get them into the field. Get them out into the public. Realize what that simulation is actually going to look like.
That's really interesting about the use of gaming technology in sort of rehab on baseball players. Some of my friends here in the audience will know, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to the Nationals, but I am from Southern California, so I am kind of a Dodgers fan. So we'll keep you up here, Dr.
They're a little bit better than the Nationals.
We're not going to get you back to your seat yet. All right, folks, we're going to go on here. A couple of folks brought up, sort of under the surface a little bit, kind of what are we being taught in school? Nika talked to us a little bit about, in particular, literacy skills for real, in terms of understanding that. So the next part we're going to talk about, as we discussed in the report, is so how is digital tools, how are they being used in the classroom? What are teachers actually doing with these digital tools, and what is the connection with those digital tools and college and career preparation? So that's the next part of our conversation. So Joseph kind of already did this slide for me. Thank you, Joseph. Saves a little time there. But just to recap, in case you came in late, what we did is that every year we asked teachers about their use of digital tools within their professional tasks. So what are they doing, either directly with students, or what are they doing to improve their own skills or to make their own life easier as a teacher? And so it was really interesting for us. We looked at the national data, looked at what all teachers told us, but we're curious people at Project Tomorrow. And so we said, well, let's take a look at this a couple different ways. And so we always look at it from the assignment of the teacher, so whether it's an elementary teacher, middle school, or high school teacher, or what they're teaching, English language arts versus math or science. But the one that struck out was that, exactly as Joseph said, those 28% teachers that told us that they believe that their tech skills are more advanced compared to their peers. What they were doing with technology almost looked like a recipe in terms of what we want teachers to be doing. And I was particularly struck by the one where they are customizing digital content for the classroom, taking different disparate pieces of digital content, which could be video, and bringing that into the classroom in a very unique, customized recipe or formula that's appropriate for their students. You can also ask teachers about their use of different types of digital content. And again, because we're curious people, we did the disaggregation here. And what we came out with was that, in fact, within the universe of teachers, science teachers seem to be leading the path in terms of the types of digital content that they're using. Now, some of that is tied to their curriculum. So when we talk about virtual labs, we're probably more likely talking about science teaching. But it goes all the way across the board, whether we're talking about their use of video that they found online, the bringing in of real-time data into the classroom experience, online textbooks, or even videos that they create themselves. So it really sets up sort of an interesting conversation, which says, so what's happening with specific slices of teachers or silos of teachers that are doing some of these more innovative things and really adopting technology for their classroom? Across the board, we found out that actually we've seen a shift in terms of, in particular to digital content, what teachers are thinking about in terms of that relationship to college and career-ready skills. So back in 2009, about a quarter of classroom teachers overall made that linkage. They said that the use of digital content is helping their students prepare for the future. Very interestingly, here in 2013, that number's up to a little bit over a third. So I do think we're moving in the right direction in terms of thinking about it. We need to do some more work, but we are moving in the right direction. The other thing that we did is that we took a look at what teachers told us was the benefits of using technology in terms of impacting student success. And again, took a look at maybe some exemplars of different teacher groups. And so we looked at teachers that are teaching an online class, teachers that are using digital content, such as what I just represented to you, and also teachers that are teaching in one-to-one mobile classrooms. So this might be some interesting data for you to take a look at. So across the board, for example, the percentage of teachers that are now teaching in a one-to-one classroom environment, about 38% of teachers nationwide told us that that's what their classroom looks like. So really interesting here in terms of looking at what the teachers saw as the benefits of technology use. And again, we see these same sort of words popping up from the teachers. Problem solving, critical thinking skills, taking ownership of the students' learning, being able to be more creative, working collaboratively, and being able to apply those academic concepts to the real world, so making that sort of relevancy pitch that Kathy was talking about here. And so we see that very strong in these exemplar groups of teachers as well. And then the other thing that we thought would be interesting to share here is that we also ask teachers every year about their professional development needs, because we know that while those other slides are talking to us about the exemplars, we know that there are teachers, as Joseph mentioned, that want more professional development. So we also took a look at this and said, well, where is that sort of falling out? What do they need? And is there any difference in terms of whether they are a first-year teacher in their very first year of teaching, or there are more veteran experienced teachers? So where is that falling out? And so very interesting in terms of professional development, I think this totally feeds into the department's initiative around connected educators, is that we actually see all the way across the board, teachers are very interested in more professional development. Whether it's about how do I differentiate instruction and build up their own personal capacity within the classroom, or skill-based things. How do I find that digital content? How do I find good educational mobile apps? How do I use tablets or some other type of mobile devices? How do I bring games into the classroom? So very interesting that we see a consistency all the way across the board. Now there were two areas in which those first-year teachers had very high needs in terms of, or expectations for more professional development. And as you can see, they were on the high side here in terms of differentiating instruction. They were also more interested than their peers in using games. And then the other side that isn't up here, but is in your report, is also those first-year teachers were very interested in using social media with their students and also for communications with parents. So quite often I think we think about these first-year teachers in the very traditional sense about being younger and maybe having grown up with using games and social media and some of these tools. But across the board, they are still looking for professional development about how to effectively integrate this. So with this, I'm going to turn it back over to my panel for our next set of questions. And I think at this point, I'll open it up and see who wants to talk. I know Dr. Murphy told us he's got more goodies there to share with us. But what I want to talk about is the use of digital tools both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. Now, one of the things that we at Project Tomorrow have learned very strongly and vividly, Monet will probably agree with this, from our students is that learning today for students is a 24/7 enterprise. It's no longer just what happens between 9 and 3. In fact, the students tell us that they are learning all the time. It may not always be the types of things their teachers want them to be learning, or mom and dad want them to be learning, but they do look at it all as within that learning context. And so I want us to have sort of a broad conversation about about learning in that big contextual sense about using technology, whether it is teacher-initiated or teacher-sponsored technology use or digital use, or student self-initiated technology use. So what is involved with that? So does anyone have any examples? I think Dr. Murphy does. Anyone have any examples of how digital tools are being used effectively in classrooms or in after-school settings to be able to prepare students for the future?
Sure, let me just give you a snapshot, and I don't think these things stand in isolation, meaning we are having a enrollment increase in our school division where we're growing close to 4% each year. That's about 800 students. And we've been caught up in this where we just can't have buildings come online that quickly. So we are having to begin to explore what we can do in changing that dynamic and also individualizing instruction to meet different students' needs. As a result, one thing I'll point to is we've been able to reduce our dropout rate by over 50% because we've been able to provide virtual online classes for kids. We've been able to meet their needs individually, and technology has been a piece of that. But my real story boils down to a situation where I have a principal leader who says, I want to make a difference, and I want to look at flipped classrooms at the elementary level. And so she engages with a young, what I would say, early in her career teacher who's about 28 years old. So pretty contemporary, pretty current, has had technology in her life. The teacher's initial reaction was, don't want to be involved, not interested in doing this. Principal says, I'll give you iPads, I'll give you all of the accoutrements to go along with this. And the teacher tries to, or the principal tries to convince the teacher this is something you want to do. Well, the success of that is it catches fire. But the most heartwarming part of that, and we have a little snapshot, we call them, about this. And a young man says to his teacher, he says, Miss Hale, you make me feel so good because I get to take you home with me. And I get to And I think the impression I want to leave you with is a number of our students come to school and there already is an achievement gap. And so how do we close that gap and that timeline? You can't do it in one fell swoop. This teacher has extended her classroom at about 15 minutes a day with the assignments that she's providing with the kids through the iPad initiative that's going on at the school. Those things become cumulative. It's not going to be solved in a day or a week, but I think we need to have that kind of approach and outlook. And in looking at your data, you know, one of the things is there's critical mass here. I always think critical mass is achieved by having 60% or more. I think the greatest influence that we can have on changing critical mass is what we do for teachers. And I just want to say, teaching is one of the hardest professions. That, you know, the amount of preparation, the work that goes into preparing for a lesson is tremendous. So that's where I think a lot of our energy should be placed in that teacher development. But your report points that out. I think it's how we highlight that and really we're able to continue to emphasize that. That'll be the power that kind of turns the switch here to have that eclipse 70, 80%. And then I think you get some real momentum, some strong momentum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Murphy. We truly want the data to be used by schools and districts in exactly that way, whether it's a local momentum effort or a statewide effort or a national effort to really be able to propel that. And let me just make one comment on your statement. For those of you that were with us, you may have heard the students on April 9th talk about some of their technology use and what they were doing. One of the things that always strikes me whenever I do briefings or have the opportunity to do panels with students or I do focus groups with students all around the country is the students always speak so eloquently about the importance of their teacher. I think sometimes, particularly in the media, and there's been a little mythology that the students will say, oh, I've got technology, I don't need a teacher, and that is nowhere near what the students themselves tell us, at least what we're doing here. So I'm going to flip over here. Now, Kathy, obviously, in the informal learning space, which is such a fabulous connection between home and school, the center, you're doing all kinds of fabulous things around the use of technology to be able to help students. Would you like to share some of those?
Sure, I do, and then I want to make sure I come back to the PD.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I didn't mean to get you off track.
No, but I'm on track on the other one, so I'm going to come back to that in a second. So the Learning Center actually for careers in STEM, whether it be in engineering or robotics or video game design or rocket science or whatever it might be. The content is often delivered virtually or through their computer, and it's supported by the teacher. So we've been doing this for 6 or 7 years now, and really the students become in charge of their learning that way. And the teacher is more of a facilitator and a guide of that particular learning. And it has made a significant difference in what young people think is possible for their future. They actually are thinking about, considering college that maybe they never thought of before, or careers that they never thought of before. It is attractive to the business community. We were approached by a company called Lycor that manufactures a DNA sequencer. And what they wanted to do is they felt like there weren't enough young people coming out, particularly from diverse backgrounds, coming out of colleges who were really interested in medical research. So they said, hey, can we give you this piece of equipment? Would you help design some kind of a hands-on curriculum for like an AD biology kind of class and see if that might take hold? And it's really taken off. It's professional grade equipment. None of the content at the Learning Center is watered down for kids. It is all challenging. So it matters not if you have a learning disability or if you come from a second language family. You can still all be successful because everything is quite hands-on. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to learn from those mistakes, and you're supported through it, which I think is really kind of that secret sauce of Learning Center. On the professional development front, several years ago, the Learning Center, we actually provide a program during the school day for a 5th grade classroom to come in and become either forensic scientists or marine scientists throughout the day. So about 150 kids will come in each week for that Monday through Friday. When we work with superintendents to kind of talk about what can we do with the teachers while they're there, the teachers actually go through professional development the Learning Center provides. And we started out by offering science instruction so that they were able to use their science curriculum more effectively rather than it just be another reading lesson for young people. It actually is very hands-on. That has kind of grown over time. We've added a technology piece. We started out really just helping teachers learn how to use the Microsoft suite. They were very uncomfortable with just kind of the basics of PowerPoint, to the point where people were in tears. No kidding. Today, that program has really matured and grown. We're working with teachers on creating wikis and blogs. They're using Animoto and Prezi more regularly. And that kind of growth, I think, gives me a lot of hope for the future. I know Julie and the Project Tomorrow team is part of 100K in 10, as is the Tiger Woods Foundation, which is really trying to train teachers, 100,000 teachers across the country in high-quality STEM. The message I would send, and you're absolutely right, Joseph, it's not happening fast enough. It just isn't. It just isn't. So how do we scale it? We don't have time to wait anymore. We really don't. We do it a district at a time, and we require it, and we have to do that. The kids' future is at stake, and we're just moving way too slow.
Thank you, Kathy. Definitely echo all of that. I'm thinking back to a comment that Joseph made, and I think you called them islands of innovation. I usually refer to them as campfires of innovation. I think it's the old Girl Scout in me thinking about it that way. But very much, even as Dr. Murphy said, this idea of how do we make this so that it has that sort of tipping point in terms of it not being, one teacher in this school or one teacher in this district or a couple teachers in this district, but being more something that's just commonplace. And so absolutely, we need to be able to not only be amping up our efforts, but also be thinking smartly about how do we do this and to be able to affect larger numbers of teachers and larger numbers of students. Now, Nika, I know you're doing some interesting things in the classroom with digital tools. So why don't you tell us a little bit? Why don't you give us sort of a little bit about what you're doing?
Okay. Well, let me first say this, that PD is wonderful. We have PD, a big PD coming up actually with Discovery Education, where they are showing us how to implement different things in the classroom, digital media, and that's a wonderful thing. But I think the fear in the end is, okay, I've learned these things, but if I don't have the resources to actually implement it into my classroom, what kind of is the point? it's great to hear about it, but if the resources aren't there, then it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Well, that being said, in our classroom, we're lucky enough to have smart boards so the students get to interact with the work, which is a wonderful thing because they love coming up to the board and touching it and moving things around. So that's one aspect of it. We have online textbooks, which is wonderful because carrying a really heavy textbook is a burden. And then with it are different tools, like different assessment tools and different like vocabulary tools, and flip the word and pronounce it, and other different technical tools that you would have with a standard paper textbook. Of course, we watch videos and we watch movies to enhance what they learn as well. And being an English teacher, I try to show them how to do research online, which they don't enjoy at all, but it's part of what they need to be successful. And I try to let them know that the kid is not where you want to be in or in your research. And then we talk about plagiarism and we look at examples by actually going on and manipulating Wikipedia and saying, hey, well, look, anybody can change it. And I think it's engaging for them because it's a technological age. They do get to use their phones to do different things in the classroom, which they really love. And it builds an environment of trust, of course. So a lot of different hands-on things. They use Demodo as well, and I think it makes them feel connected. Like you said a moment ago, like, hey, I can just leave a message and my teacher will respond back. I think it surprises them when you respond at 9, 10, 11 o'clock. Like, what are you doing up? Surprised, but they get very excited by that kind of thing. But I think it brings us all together, including the parents, including other teachers. Because I've had other teachers that have gone onto the site and said, hey, I looked at your lesson or that kind of thing. So it is also open communication.
I love that idea of, it's actually another strand of our Speak Up data where we talk about communication between teachers and schools and students and parents and how the digital tools have really opened that up. I know some teachers would say they don't want to respond at 9 o'clock.
It's not mandatory, but it's an option.
It is an option. Any other thoughts on this side in terms of how digital tools are being used effectively?
Just a few thoughts from my perspective. I've got kind of a micro focus group within my family. It's 3 teachers. So 2 teach in the elementary school level, 1 teaches at the university level. And I asked them if they, I shared a report with them and asked them to give me feedback on their perspective as well. And, some very good things of the collaboration aspect, the communications aspect, really allowing for growth and building a network, having more people contribute to the conversation than typically we look at within just a school or school district. But then also talking about some of the challenges of having the right device for students, as an example. How much can you actually do with a smartphone if it's a unique assignment versus a tablet versus a laptop or something like that. And for professional development, my daughter-in-law is she's got 56th grade now. From a professional development perspective, we're probably leveraging Dr. South's comments about innovation centers. Much of their professional development is kind of generic. So you've got students that maybe, or teachers that maybe is a little bit too advanced, and you've got advanced teachers that are teens, not really working on time. So it's how do we as a teaching community work together to bring everybody up at the same time as well. And then one last little thing is the youngest one, the one that teaches at the University of Kentucky. She was deputy director of the Writing Center, but teaches information and library sciences now, and talks about the remediation that's necessary for a lot of incoming freshmen in their writing and communication skills and being able to make the transition from PowerPoint Prezi as an example, so that they are starting to use the tools that are used in colleges rather than maybe the tools that are used in high school.
All good points, Greg. I was struck by the readiness conversation, which also Joseph brought up. Are teachers ready for different types of professional development? Are they ready to use different types of digital content or technology tools? I'm actually, after I am done with this presentation here today, folks, and I leave your good company, I'm actually going down to North Carolina, where for the last 3 years, Project Tomorrow has been running a National Science Foundation grant looking at the readiness of middle school math and science teachers to use digital content. And we actually came up with a spectrum of analyzing teachers' readiness based on the idea that not one size fits all when we talk about professional development. We really need to be thinking, as we do with the students, about individualizing instruction and also individualizing professional development.
Well, where you may have pockets too. My oldest one, although he's K-6 music teacher, he actually runs the Science and Technology Club.
Sure.
So taking advantage of the individual skill sets of the individual, maybe in areas other than where they're actually teaching.
Good. All right, so I'm going to move on now. We've been talking a little bit about teachers, but what we really want to talk about, I'm going to go back to Dr. Murphy's comment, we really want to talk about building up the capacity of schools and districts and communities to make sure that today's students are well prepared for the future. So again, I'm going to give you a little bit of data. I'm going to have one question for my panel, and then we're going to open it up to you folks to your questions and comments. So one of the things that we think is really interesting is that we've been asking district administrators for the last couple of years about what types of different solutions, and we start off in the very broad sense in terms of solutions, do they think will impact student outcomes and really help students be ready for the future. So the number one, echoed here, that the administrators tell us is improving teacher effectiveness. So what type of professional development or ongoing networks of teachers can exist so that teachers are more effective in their craft. The second one the administrators told us was this idea of integrating some of what used to be called 21st century skills, what we're now calling career and college-ready skills, into the curriculum as seamlessly as possible. And actually, Nika started talking about that right at the beginning. But then the third one, right almost, within 10 percentage points, 12 percentage points of the first one, is this idea of leveraging technology. And the types of technologies that district administrators tell us they think have the greatest promise are a lot of the ones we've talked about here today, whether it's digital content, blended learning environments, flipped learning models, some type of a one-to-one or tablet usage, some type of computing device in the hands of students, online textbooks, all the same things that we all talked about here. Additionally, just looking at online learning in particular, we've seen such a dramatic increase, and actually Dr. Murphy teed this up for us as well, in terms of schools that are offering online classes for students. So based on our data from last fall, 41% of high schools said that they are offering some type of online classes for their students in math, science, social studies, English, and language arts. About a third are doing that with world languages. And the number is down to, at this point, only about 17% of high schools that say they're not offering some type of an online learning experience for their students. In many cases, it's because they want to address different types of students. So I think initially, particularly with fully online classes, there was a thought that that was the great pathway, shall we say, for students that needed credit recovery or to stem the dropout rate. But now we're actually seeing, or at least hearing from principals, that they're looking at it as alternatives for advanced coursework, for gifted students, for dual enrollment, for homebound students for different types of reasons. I'm actually working with a school district in Washington State that has, as part of an expulsion program, the students have to pass 2 online courses to get back into school. So they're not sending the expulsion students home and just saying, go sit, watch TV. They're actually making them come to a center and take 2 online classes so that they can come back into the system actually better informed. We also know mobile devices are having quite an impact in schools and districts all around the country, whether it is with tablets or netbooks or laptops or smartphones or the new one-type programs that are set up. It's very interesting when we ask principals, they actually make a pretty direct correlation, not only in terms of extending that learning day, but actually in terms of the type of workplace skills that we're thinking about. They actually see those sort of connections. And the big story here has been the change in terms of how high school principals are thinking about allowing students to use their own devices. So it's going to seem like ancient history, but 2010 really wasn't that far away to go. But in 2010, 63% of high school principals told us that it was unlikely that they would let students use their own devices in school. And you can see that number today has fallen from last fall to 32%. And the percentage of principals that say they're allowing students to use their own devices actually within instruction has almost doubled, with 10% saying that they have it as a regular policy. They have. The other thing that's really interesting in this is parents' change of thought about using mobile devices and the connectivity of mobile devices to making sure that students are well prepared for the future. And so we did disaggregation and asked parents how likely they were to want their child in a class where the class could use their computer on mobile devices, and how likely is it that they would buy their child that type of device. And we disaggregated this here in the report based on whether those parents were from an urban, rural, or suburban district, a Title I school, whether they were elementary parents, middle school parents, and high school parents. And as you can see across the board, it's kind of a boring chart. I couldn't really do that. Chart for you I had to do as a table because the numbers are so relatively close, really speaking to the strong valuation that parents place on mobile devices. Now, in terms of digital content, administrators, as with mobile devices, as with online learning, see a direct connection in terms of that preparedness. But they face two pretty significant challenges, and I think they already came up, both of them. One was not, how do I provide enough computers or devices or the entry point for students in terms of all this rich digital content and online learning opportunities. And then the second one, that I know is a hot topic here in town, is this idea of the lack of sufficient bandwidth to be able to support the use of digital content in the classroom. That's really needed to be able to actualize all of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the audience to hold on 1 second. I'm going to ask one question of our panel, then we're going to have the audience have a little bit of time before we wrap up here with Mark's comments. So we're obviously talking about, we started talking about student readiness, we then started talking about teachers, what they needed. Now we're broadening it out to schools, districts, and communities. So what sort of advice do any of you have in terms of thinking about how can we make a stronger connection between the use of digital tools and college and career-ready skills? What can we do to build up this capacity and address the scaling issue so that we're not dealing with either these islands of innovation or my campfires of innovation? What can we do? Ideas?
Well,
it's a hard question.
Yeah, it is. I think the opportunity is here for collaboration across systems, whether it be K-12 and higher ed and businesses and so on. We need to kind of get everybody on the same page. It's been a long time that we've had really worked with the business community to even talk with the education community. They don't seem to understand each other. I think those walls are breaking down somewhat. But I think that can help, at least for some of the funding issues that seem to be out there. If it's important enough, I think that's a big piece of it, not to mention policy issues and things like that need to be addressed in order to make things happen. And I do think there's just a big collaborative opportunity here.
You know, a variety of thoughts here. I think one is national security. I think we have to put that on the table as far as an issue. Are we preparing our students and those that are going to be moving into the workforce? And are we maintaining that competitiveness with other nations? And I think there's a lot of dialogue and discussion out there. I'll also reflect back just on a discussion for many of you in the room. I may date myself here, but a large discussion in my family when I was 10 years old was whether we should buy a World Book or Encyclopedia Britannica. You have that discussion. The recent conversation or the commercial, I think it's the Cisco Systems commercial, where the little kid is hitting purchase. Have you seen that on the TV? And the guy's in the factory and he says, you know, we're back, and it's an encyclopedia of the world, though, or something to that effect. And what I think that echoes in this conversation and that commercial, if you've seen it, is if we're using the World Book like I did, or the Encyclopedia Britannica in the same way that we used it back in 1960, that we're utilizing technology, we're just sort of, it's an add-on, or it's an addition to the house. It's really got to be utilized in changing the way that we deliver instruction. That means that we're also going to need to change what schools look like. And I think that's where this tension begins to exist. I went to an event the other day where second graders had put a slide deck together, they had done a bunch of research, they incorporated a video into their whole presentation. All wonderful for second graders. But do we want 12th graders making that kind of presentation? No, that's way beyond them. They're out in the field, they're doing other things that really are much tighter and job related. So I think we've really got to rethink our K-12 education system, or as I say, K-16 or K-20, because that's where the real tension and the power is going to come for us making a change. We're back in the World world book scenario, we're not going to be moving as quickly as we need to.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I think that teachers or principals or administration need to be more open to the idea of technology, because I know that at my school in 10th grade we get our own Google email, so we now sharing documents with our teachers and we do a lot of typing and things like that, but we still aren't allowed to bring our own like devices to school to take notes or things like that. So we're still writing down notes to our teachers' office and team, and then we newspapers or things like that. And it's just like with technology is advancing like this, we should be able to, and it's like the school doesn't have enough funds to give students on their own, then students should be able to bring their own and things like that, but the school has to be open to the idea of it before we
Do you have, and I agree 100% with you, Monet, do you have any ideas in terms of how to help your school principals or your teachers be more open to those ideas?
I think it's more of like trust issues that is not going to be just utilized for work, but if it's like no cell phones or you use iPads or tablets or laptops, maybe it will be less untrusting and like texting people or things like that, and just make sure that it's being utilized for the right things. But some people, some teachers are just like, oh my goodness, how did you do that? When we do presentations using Prezi instead of PowerPoint, like they just seem like it's just out of this world.
That's why we have students on the panel. So thank you for bringing it home for us, Monet. Thank you so much. I want to see if anyone in the audience has a question for the panel, or a comment, or a thought. Yes, Ron.
Thank you. Ron Weezer from Baltimore City Schools. I had a question for the English teacher.
Mika.
Yeah, Mika. My question was, you said that you guys are using a lot of technology to teach kids, your digital books and everything else. I wanted to find out, are your kids blogging, your students blogging, are you doing any kind of collaborative effort, are they doing any kind of sharing in terms of talking to each other around, how are they doing that? Is it something that we monitor in the classroom, or is it just organic?
Definitely organic. Blogging, I would say in my 7th grade environment, not quite yet. However, I know the principal was running a book club on their mobile, and then she had each of the students go out and create a blog to go ahead and discuss what they were learning through the book study. So that it wasn't so much in the classroom, but it was in the culture of the school. Hopefully, it will infiltrate from there. I think it's individual. It's individual based on the teacher's comfort level, based on the teacher's knowledge, based on the teacher's trust. As when they pointed out, because there's a lot of different things that happen when you talk about bringing devices into the classroom. So it's just kind of organic. I think it's just based on the teacher's trust level. But we haven't quite got to the point. Hopefully we can get to that point, but that would help with the literacy aspect and the writing aspect. So I think that's a great idea. Not very difficult.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw this back over to Ron, who is here from, as he said, Baltimore City Public Schools, and I don't think I've done a briefing here on the Hill that Ron Beecher hasn't had. He gets sort of a gold star for that. Ron, within Baltimore, do you see that students are blogging? Is that something that you're supporting within the schools?
It's not happening a lot. We would like to see it more, and so that's what I'm kind of finding out what anybody else is doing. Part of our challenge is that we have Blackboard in Baltimore City, and so a lot of it is just bringing those tools in. The professional development piece is what's lacking. A lot of teachers are not getting the professional development of how to use that learning management system effectively, so that it hampers a lot of what we're doing in the classroom. So it's not happening a lot. Outside of the kids using Facebook and other things like that on their own, but not in the classroom at all.
One of the things that we saw in the student data was the students that are either starting up their own blogs, not teacher initiated, or following other blogs, and that's happening sort of outside of school, which is based on students' own self-directed interests, which is also really interesting. So, yes, Katie.
For a question for Dr. Murphy, I think the emphasis is always on college readiness. But now as we're looking at just our workforce changing, the cost of higher education, more just this life readiness, do you think that things like online classes, potentially even talking about more of a technological, like technical schools engaging with high school students to open up those career paths, understanding that not everyone is able to or interested in going to a four-year institution? Do you think that's kind of where we're moving? And we're talking about just like shaking out our learning environments.
Yeah, and you know, these are microcosms. We have 90% of our kids either pursue a 2 or a 4-year opportunity. They head off to that. So we have a balance of about 10% of those students that go into other avenues, go into work, maybe going to technical school, etc. I think my message continues to be, regardless of where you are, I'm not my father. My father went to the same job for 40 years, and he pretty much that was his job. All of us here, we may have a dozen jobs over our lifetime, and each one of those jobs is going to require us to continue our education. So that's really my message. It doesn't matter where you are on the continuum, if you decide to go into the workforce or you move right into perhaps some type of post-secondary opportunity, what does that ultimately look like, and then what's the next step? So it's much more forward thinking. You're not going to be able to just say, I found a job and here I will be for my lifetime. That's not the environment we're living in today. And I think you know, it was almost somewhat of a detriment if you had a resume that showed every 3 to 5 years you were transitioning out of your job. Today, that's an asset.
It's a whole new normal in terms of what that means. Okay, I'm going to take one more question. Yes.
Michelle Phil, I live in Hanover, Pennsylvania, Southwestern School District. I'm an instructional technology coach, so I work with teachers in this area. And I guess my question is really for anyone on the panel. I'm all about digital tools, all about using digital resources with kids, but I'm curious what your take is on the role of the teacher and what we can do to help the teacher make the instructional shift, not just in how to use the tools, but how to shift your instruction so that the students are more involved in learning. More student-centered, more learner-centered. What kind of things can we do to get that going? Because I think if you can make that shift, then the tools, will be needed.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And when we sometimes get talking about the shift, we're thinking just about the technology, but it's really a much bigger conversation. Anyone have some thoughts on that?
I mean, I'll jump in here. One of my middle school principals came to me and she was kind of pushing back and she said, you know, I understand, Pat, you're giving us these devices or you're giving us all the different, but she said, I've got to bring this to my teachers so they can change the way instruction is happening. If you can provide that, and that's going to come with the PD, which we've talked about, then I think what can happen will be the result of really what you're looking for. And so it's not just give us a device, give us a tool, give us something additional. I will also share with you, and some of my team is here this afternoon, and they'll be tickled by this, but one of my staff members wanted me to start tweeting over a year ago. Okay? I have not physically been able to tweet until about 4 weeks ago. Okay? But really, I was petrified. I was going to make a mistake. I was going to look foolish, and all of the dynamics around that. So I think, unfortunately, we have to provide time, but it's also building capacity, and all of us, regardless of where we fit in this continuum. So again, going back to teachers, I mean, that work is just tremendous. It's very difficult. And then saying, okay, you've got to begin to evolve with a new skill. It's not easy, but I think if what we're looking for, it's got to go through the vein of instruction. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. And that's what my middle school principal said to me. Pat, if we can bring this along so they can see how instruction can happen differently, the kids can be successful, just handing iPads out to kids or a device so every child has one, that's not really going to get us there. We're not going to get tapped into the critical mass. For me, that's individualizing instruction. It's also changing the school day and the school year so that we have kind of continuous learning, and then that really begins to feed what you began to talk about is, okay, what does learning look like for me beyond K-12 into post-secondary, and then also as I have the attitude as I go into my a job or a new position, and how do I continue to grow? So I think that's how all those pieces in my mind kind of link together. And that is going to take PD, and I think that's what this report really says, which is excellent.
It's that idea that the department came up with in terms of their last National Education Technology Plan about lifelong, lifeline, and life deep learning. It really is part of that conversation. But we've had a great conversation. As sort of give us some closing thoughts, some closing wisdom, I want to invite my good friend Mark Billis to come up from Blackboard. Blackboard is, of course, one of our fabulous sponsors, and so we appreciate all their support. And Mark is the Senior Vice President of K-12. So come on up, Mark. Keep the panel here so we can all thank them at the end. But in the meantime, as my voice is dying here, I'm giving this over to you.
Thanks, Julie. I appreciate it. As Julie said, my name is Mark Bellis. I have the honor and the privilege of running the K-12 business at Blackboard. Before I make a couple of comments, I just want to thank the panel for their great comments. All of them tremendously insightful. I can't help but be incredibly impressed by the 11th grader. Incredible poise and presence. When you're ready to come to work for Blackboard, just let me know. I'm sure we can find a place for you. Blackboard, I think most people know of Blackboard in more of a higher education setting. We do have about 12,000 schools and districts that we work with across the U.S. and Canada. I'm privileged to lead a team of about 200 people, and we have been honored to work with Julie and her organization for about 8 years now. The data and the information that Project Tomorrow and the Speak Up survey serve up to us and the multiple voices and constituencies that we're allowed to hear in this single report, incredibly valuable for us. It informs a lot of the investment that we make in our K-12 business, just hearing what the needs and the appetites are for these various constituents. And as a global leader in education technology, it's critical that we stay abreast of what people need. Every day we are working with schools and districts and classrooms to try and improve the educational experience and outcomes for those kids, for the parents, for the teachers, for the administrators. And this data just serves as an incredibly valuable resource for us to leverage. We've heard bits and pieces throughout the session today about the change that is coming and the positive trends that are happening. I want to highlight a couple of those. One of those is actually a customer of ours that we work with down in North Carolina, Mooresville-Braden School District. There's a perception, I think, sometimes that moving to technology means you will be increasing your budget, that you have to spend more. We're seeing schools and districts across the country where they're actually able to repurpose existing budget, and in Mooresville's case in particular, no longer buying textbooks affords them the opportunity to spend on technology. And so as we worked with them over the years, we've seen them through this digital conversion that they've worked with. A very poorly funded district, I think they are either 103rd or 113th out of 115 districts in North Carolina, actually seeing tremendous academic achievement results. They're now third in terms of test score composite results. Their graduation rates increased from 64% to 93%. And actually attendance is up as well. So the notion of this has to be a high budget item is just not the case. We see it all the time. The other topic that was referenced a handful of situations earlier, and I want to touch on, is professional development. We are working with states now across the country to try and tackle this professional development initiative head on. Most recently, Arizona Department of Education. We are working with them to ensure that for about 60,000 educators across 2,000 public schools, they have the ability now to do professional learning and collaboration to further the educational experiences, again, of both the teachers and the learners. So I guess the closing comment that I will make is I think sometimes it gets overwhelming for us to talk about fixing this problem at a macro level. It is a huge challenge for us. There are pockets of success everywhere we look, whether you refer to it as campfires of innovation or islands of innovation. People are having success. The opportunity to come together as groups, people who care and are passionate about this topic, and share some of those successes, like Project Tomorrow and the Speak Up survey do, incredibly valuable. So again, Julie, can't thank you and the board enough for the great work that you do. Our call to action is we will continue to make sure that this message and this data and information gets out. We work with Julie very closely at some of our events, as well as industry events like ISTE, to make sure that we do share this information. And when Julie started and was kind of introducing, she kind of joked about maybe starting off on a negative and hopefully ending on a positive. I guess the positive that I hope we all take away from this is just that we are seeing tremendous success. For people who've been in education now for a while, the opportunity to make fundamental change right now, I feel like is higher than it's ever been. And so while it can be overwhelming to think about the magnitude of the problem, don't be overwhelmed. Whether you can impact one kid or one classroom or one school or a district or your state, do what you can. You are the people who will ultimately make the difference and your peers. So I encourage you to continue the great and noble work that you have started. There is truly no more noble cause for any of us than to ensure that our future learners grow up in a world where they can be successful. So, thank you. Appreciate it.
Call to action, Mark, sending us off on a high note. I was worried about that at the beginning, so thank you for bringing it home for us. Once again, I want to thank our fabulous sponsors, including our good friends at Blackboard, and of course all of my nonprofit partners that help us get the word out about Speak Up. And I also want to tell you that if you are interested in more of the Speak Up data, because once again, as I said at the beginning, our mission is to make this data available to people that can make change at the school, the district, or community level. And so on our website, tomorrow.org, very interesting and easy to remember, tomorrow.org, you can find quite a wealth of the data findings to be able to use to bring it to your particular community, to your particular schools and districts, to your particular workplace. We also, as Mark mentioned, we will be actually releasing some other additional reports through the year. In just a couple of weeks, we're going to be releasing a new report on online learning trends at the ISTE conference in Atlanta. That's sort of our next report that's coming down the pipe, as well as some other reports that we'll have as well. And then, of course, before we know it, it will be that happy time of year for us in Project Tomorrow, which is the opening of Speak Up, which will happen this year on October 6th. Once again, we'll have online surveys for K-12 students, teachers, parents, administrators, as well as community members. And so whether you are with a school or a district, or you have children or grandchildren in a school or district, or you have worked somewhere and have some association with helping schools and districts be part of this, remember that this is a service that we provide to schools and districts. Really an opportunity for them to hear from their own stakeholders, much of the same information that we have here. So I do want to thank our fabulous panelists, Dr. Murphy, it was great having you here with us. Mika, so wonderful to have the teacher perspective, very, very important in this conversation, so glad that you could join us. Monet, so fabulous to have you here. You left us with a high note in terms of the potential, and I can't believe you got offered a job. Take that to the bank, make sure you get his card before you leave. Kathy, always wonderful to have you here, and thank you so much for representing our board as well as representing the Faculty Performance Center. And my good friend, Brett, thank you for bringing the business perspective. Will you please join me in thanking her? Go on for much, much longer, but we are closing it down at this point. There are still some more fruit and cheese for those of you that are in the room here, and cookies if you want to join us, and we'll stick around in case you want to have some additional conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.